All right, so yes, if you want to go to the next screen. There we go, thank you. So I wanted to start by just introducing myself and doing an overview here of what we're going to be talking about this evening. So to start out, time and time again, research has quantified the value of diversity in the workplace. It shows a sustainable position, substantial positive correlation between diverse leadership teams, innovation, customer satisfaction, financial performance, and other elements that are crucial in business success. According to a McKinsey and Company report, companies with leadership in the top quartile for racial and ethnic diversity were 35% more likely to have financial returns above their industry median. So the why is often very apparent when it comes to diversity and inclusion, but the how is often not. So that's why we put these events together. So I wanted to just thank everybody for joining us tonight for an informative discussion with industry leaders where you'll gain actionable advice on how to actually start building or joining a diverse and inclusive leadership team. So our topic tonight is diversifying leadership pipelines. And actually, if you can go to the next screen, Elizabeth.
This one or the
Yeah, thank you. So I wanted to, because we had mentioned that we have ASL interpreters on with us this evening on Zoom. Eleni and Don, they're actually going to be with us. So we have two of them. And just to go over some, really briefly, some housekeeping with this for the speakers is to verify that your microphone is muted when others are speaking during the meeting. Make sure that you're speaking slowly and clearly at all times. Brief pauses are normal and required for a smooth interpreting process. One person should speak at a time utilizing the raised hand or chat room feature. Again, with that is I'm going to actually address one person at a time, so that should be fine. Understanding other accessibility features and screen views of Zoom will ensure a more inclusive experience for all meeting participants. And patience is a virtue, especially when technology is involved, which we're already realizing tonight. So next screen, Elizabeth. Here we go, thank you. So I want to next just introduce Tina for a thank you message. Tina Honey is the VP of ISACA South Florida and also one of the committee members that are putting on these Take Action events. So if we could pin Tina to the screen and have her come up. There you go. And if you want to go to the next screen for Tina, because the next 3 slides are going to be hers.
You can go to the next screen. I knew my dog was going to do that right when I get ready to talk. Jeez. Hello, everyone. I am so happy that you have been able to join us. This is the SIM ISACA joint event. It is part of our WOW series. Our series has been taking place all week. As you can see at the top of the screen here, our WOW series, the theme is recipes for resilience. And tomorrow, the topic is about auditing in the cloud. These are some additional events that we are having next month. Cloud security webinars, our COVID fundamentals. We are having our ISACA board elections in April and our general meeting. Wanted to make sure everyone knows you will receive 1 CPE credit for this webinar tonight. Make sure that you log into the Zoom with your name and the email that you registered with so that we can match that up and ensure that we get you those CPEs, as well as make sure your name on the screen is the same as someone will be ensuring that everyone attended gets the credit. And just for one additional item, if you want to be part of the ISACA board, I have put the link at the bottom of this screen. Please click on that link, fill out the forms, and we would welcome any additional volunteers for our next board. And you'll see me again in the room too about how to progress within the company to leadership roles. The next screen, please. And these are just some additional emails. If you would like to contact any of us at ISACA, here are some additional emails. Thank you and have a great event.
Thank you so much, Tina. And for anybody that's wondering, yes, we will follow up this with an email. So if anybody didn't catch any of that, we'll make sure to get that out to you. And my next screen here is, I just want to thank, because obviously in addition to myself and Tina, we actually have a full team of people that have been helping put on these last couple of events and helping organize. So I just wanted to thank Elizabeth Decker, chapter president at South Florida SIM, also Tamika McKay, from Broward County Public Schools. She's actually going to be one of our panelists. And Eileen Alon at Venture Cafe Miami, which is now going to be called Air Ventures. They're actually rebranding. Jansen Pennock at Centric Consulting, and also Luca, and I know I'm going to say this wrong, is it Jacadine? I think it's how to pronounce the last name. Also at Venture Cafe, which again is becoming Air Ventures. So just wanted to thank the team for everybody helping us. And if you want to go to the next screen, Elizabeth.
I was just going to mention,
Yeah.
Tina is also the treasurer at SIM South Florida. And since Tina did a pitch for more board members, SIM is also looking for more board members. So there's lots of opportunities for you to try out your leadership skills.
Perfect, perfect. Thank you, both of you. All right, if you want to go to the next screen. Yes, so our sponsor for the evening is actually Mission Staff. We wanted to say a big thank you to Jill Beck and her team, and I wanted to give Jill, I see you've already got her pinned up there, so thank you, Elizabeth. Wanted to give Jill a couple minutes here just to address the audience, and if you'd like to take it away, Jill. Oh, Jill, you're on mute.
How about now? Can you hear me?
Yep, now I can hear you.
Perfect. Thank you, Nikki. And like Tina and her dog barking, I'm just waiting for one of my toddlers to come knocking on my door to ask for a snack. So I apologize in advance, and I'll make this brief. So my name's Jill. I'm with Mission Staff. Just a little bit about me and my background. Originally from South Florida. So when I heard about this event and spoke with Elizabeth and learned that it was an opportunity for South Florida IT and business leaders to get together and share ideas, I was really excited for the opportunity. I've been in the staffing and recruiting world for about 15 years now. And my company, Mission Staff, we are a national staffing firm focusing on contingent and direct hire. Our areas of expertise are IT, business operations, and then we also have another team that handles like marketing, creative positions in the digital space. And we work with companies nationwide, all over, but I focus and manage the operations in Florida. And our clients range from small organizations with a few hundred employees to large enterprise companies such as Comcast, Lincoln Financial, and Johnson Controls, to name drop a few. And I think what makes Mission Staff really unique from other firms that I've worked for or know of is really the culture within Mission Staff, and not just with our team internally, but with how we feel about our consultants and the people that we place. We really try to bridge the gap from candidates feeling like temps to really feel like they're a part of something bigger. One of the things that we offer to our consultants is like a 401k program, and also a student tuition reimbursement, which is something that I know, from what I know of, a lot of other companies don't offer that. So that's something I'm really proud of, and yeah, look forward to connecting with everybody, and maybe in the future there'll be an opportunity for us to work together. So thank you for having me.
Thank you so much, Jill. And again, not only did they support with sponsorship, but that they are the reason why we can actually provide the ASL interpretation tonight. So thank you again, Jill and Mission Staff. And Elizabeth, if you want to go to the next screen. There we go. All right, so our main lady of the evening. So we have our keynote speaker, Marche Omasor. She's the founder of CyberBytes Lead Execs and an ambassador for Black in cybersecurity. And I see we've got her already pinned on the screen. So just to give you guys a brief overview of Marche's background, Miss Marche Bryant Omosor is a software engineer, speaker, cybersecurity ambassador, board of director, and founder and CEO of CyberBytes Lead Execs, which is a nonprofit that focuses on advancing years in the U.S. Air Force and taught 10 years as an adjunct professor for several community colleges. Furthermore, Marche advocates for upskilling underserved management pipelines, is a promoter of global cybersecurity awareness programs, and is considered a community cyber change agent. Marche plans to conduct research in equity-based leadership development, small business and nonprofit cybersecurity, hygienist, and training next gen women leaders. So thank you, Marche, for being with us tonight. And you now have the floor.
Thank you so much for being here. Everybody can hear me?
Yes.
Okay, great. Am I sharing my screen or you have it, my slides?
We can do it either way. We have your slides, but you can share them if you prefer to do it that way.
Okay, I just don't see them.
That was just the next ones that you had set up, right, Nikki?
No, those were in the Google Drive, her slides.
Okay. I can get them.
Do you want us to present them, Marche?
I have them up. I can present them. No problem.
Okay. Yeah.
Share. Okay, can you see my slides? Diversity best practices?
Yes.
Yes.
Okay, excellent. All right, thank you for being here today. I'm going to present you for Advancing Women Leaders, a presentation that I did for Grace Hopper this year for Women in Computing IT. And it was my first round of actually presenting to a congregation that large. Now, we've already gone over my bio, so I'll skip over these slides. Okay. And basically, just a little bit before we get into it, I'm born and raised in St. Petersburg, Florida. And as a young inner city middle school age youth, I attended school and a flyer was handed out. I was so excited when I rushed home and showed my mother. YES, it stood for Youth Engineering Society. Two professors from a well-known local university spearheaded this nonprofit to expose, encourage, and educate underrepresented students to pursue STEM careers. They taught and exemplified leadership qualities such as punctuality, follow through, lead by example, and effective communication skills. So that kind of set the table for me. And so in my career journey, I was able to see some challenges in being that I don't see people that look or act or are representative of me in my particular career fields. So that started me on this journey. And so my problem abstract states that lack of women and minority representative in the executive leadership space leads to an imbalanced structure. And businesses are challenged to transform their current mindsets and diversify demographics to top executive layers through inclusive leadership growth strategies. Businesses face obstacles every day that should be identified and then removed to provide a thriving, safe culture for all unrepresented members. Now, a problem we have is that organizations identify they need to eliminate these stale methodologies that exist. They've been grandfathered, passed on, passed up throughout our decades. And basically, we need to find out what those methodologies are and remove them, change them, upgrade them, whatever we need to do. To embrace the new shifts that we have. The paradigm shifts that we have is we're having more women in the workplace. We also have more minorities and other cultures within this workplace, and we need to be able to emulate this within our organization. And that way we can grow the talent pool to develop and adopt best practices to grow our pool. Increase emotional intelligence through mentorship and sponsorship activities also needs to be done, and it needs to be done at the lowest level as well as throughout an enterprise or business level as well. United States, despite our high record numbers in our Fortune 500 numbers of CEOs in 2020, we still have 13 companies that are run by a man for every company that's run by a woman. So we see that there's that disparity there. And we know that with women representing the population at 50% of the population, then we should be able to see even distribution around there. We should be able to get there. Current D&I program initiatives state that women and minority leaders are continually underrepresented in leadership, directly affecting our national labor workforce. And what we see is that women of color, they represent 9% of members in Congress, with women of color representing 2% of governors as of August 8, 2018, and 10% of the mayors of the nation's 100 largest cities. And with these numbers, you see they're very small. Out of 50% of women in our entire US population are women. We need to see our numbers on the rise. An explanation of D&I programs encompassing executive and leadership education to cultivate and grow potential, combined with mentorships, have produced insufficient results. So what we see is there's more work to be done, and this work needs to be a collaborative effort of everyone. It can't be just one-sided, like only one population working on this. We need to have more cohesive help throughout this initiative for everyone. All right, barriers and obstacles. Women and people of color are held to a higher standard. So what you're seeing is a lot of people are rushing to get the degrees, the certificates. We're trying to level ourselves up. But we're leveling ourselves up 3 and 4 levels, and we're still not even able to get a seat at the table. And that's the problem. Diversity of our board and director roles are very minimal and limited, and we need to be able to see representation from the top down. Because as we see, our workforce is going to be heavy on the bottom of representation of persons of color and minorities. We want to be able to see that the number matriculates up throughout those leadership pipelines into the C-suite, and also be to see some of these people into board positions such as corporate boards, nonprofit boards. There's a lot of places that we can find ways to diversify ourselves and be able to provide those diverse perspectives that are missing. Slow matriculation throughout the pipeline, they're leaky pipelines. We're going to talk about that in the future. Aggressiveness and competitiveness and authoritativeness qualities are seen as something that dings us when we're in a boardroom or in a meeting as women. And we need to be able to use and leverage these types of personalities so that we are more effective in our role. Okay. Next we have is male-dominated organizational culture, and that's what I was talking about before, is it's bottom heavy. So you're not seeing a lot of representation that people that look like us in these positions, and we're going to talk more about that soon, about why we need to see more representation of ourselves in the leadership roles. But being that it's a male-dominated organizational culture, they're making the decisions, and things that we bring to the table is not even there. We're not even on the scoreboard. We're not there making the decision. They don't have our input. We need to be able to be there to have that conversation. Uneven expectations as well, as we're expected to soar higher, have higher standards, and meet higher standards, and then our counterparts are not required to meet those same stringent qualities that we have. Workplace inequality is also a factor here. In the fact of our culture, sometimes the culture dynamics is not inclusive for us to feel like it's a safe place for us to be there. Because women, a lot of times we are the caregivers at home, and that's causes for family demands. We have to be home, we have to take time away, we have children. That those are reasons that we get pulled away. But we need to see that we're able to split those responsibilities with our male counterparts, because they should also have those responsibilities. And then you would see more of a balanced model if both sides were having the same aspirations there. Okay. Next we have is adopt diversity best practices. We want to get to the cause of some of our gender diversity challenges, how we're looking at selection, the promotion cycle, retention, the attraction, the culture that's there, driven by the organization. And we don't want that just to fall on our HR personnel, because it's an effort across the entire enterprise. We need to see that everybody has that in mind when they're going about their daily business. You need to also see that some of our contacts, just think about what when a job opening comes up and you're telling someone about it, if you don't have any people of color or people or women or minorities in your Rolodex or your contact list, then you're not talking to them. You're not going to be able to let them know about these opportunities. So we need to widen our network to include people that are diversified. So that way we'll be able to have a diverse pool to be able to attract this talent. Programs for executive training and professional development needs to be orchestrated. If it's not there, if it's already there, we need to improve upon it. We need to see also how we can provide availability and accessibility to these resources. Sometimes the resources are there, but they're only reaching a small percent of our employee pool. We need to make sure that we're getting this stuff out to everyone, because everyone deserves a seat at the table. We need to be able to give them that voice, give them that opportunity to move up. And that starts probably with our personal professional development, because we have our performance reviews and things like that with our managers. So it should start with that. We should really transform that to include like career mapping and succession planning, and trying to find ways to figure out what people want to do and help them move towards their goals. Implement women-to-women mentorships. That means that we need to see women up in the leadership role in which you want to attain. If you don't see them there, then you're not going to think that you belong. So we do want to be able to implement those. Organizational accountability, we have to hold each other accountable. When it's not being done, we need to be able to come and say, we need to do better. We need to improve. And it starts with management. We need management's buy-in 100%. Management, if they set the tone for the organization, and if we have the CEO and executives following through and setting that tone, it's going to trickle down and disseminate across the organization. Employ strategic strategies to recruit and retain diverse talent. We have to check out our strategies, think outside the box, figure out where our people are that we want to recruit and go to them. Find out where they are so we can get access to them. Just not listing it on job boards that maybe they're not members of. So we need to find ways to be ensure that we're meeting our metrics and meeting our statistics. Inspire executives to champion a diversity understudy. Have those sponsorships, have those champions, have those advocates. Those advocates actually will mentor you into that next role. The sponsors will actually have been in the role, can really teach you and help drive you towards the role. And then the champions are the ones that when you're not even in the room, they're speaking up, saying, hey, I know this person wants to, a board position. So now you're putting them up for that. So that is something else that we need to do is speak out. We need to be able to tell people and voice our concerns and voice our aspirations to others. Because if you don't, we're not mind readers. We need to know what's on your mind so we can help you reach your goals. Compel our senior managers to hire one diversity candidate. Those are initiatives that you can do, especially if you don't see any diversity at all. Our senior managers, leaders have to start trying to put in these restraints to try to help add the recruit pool to have diverse talent. So not just having to say that we put a job opening out and then we only get a set of counterparts that are not diverse talent. We get them. We want to make sure that the representation of that is diverse, and in that way everyone has a chance to be able to get at the table. Now, trends, you're looking at the education in the workplace. We see that a lot of effort is going into the K through 12 and a higher education space. We're trying to get the talent trained. We're trying to get students to get into STEM roles. We're trying to get them into leadership roles, but it starts somewhere. We have to start early. If you see that opportunity to mentor to the juniors, students prior to coming into workplace so that they understand about what it is to be a leader, to run, to actually have qualities that are to complement them being a leader, then you need to start educating them through the K through 12 and higher education spaces. Workplace, we would say early career starters, mid-career directors, up through the C-suite. We have to see that that is matriculating all the way through the C-suite and the nonprofit and corporate board space. Next steps, I would say to evaluate our current recruitment strategies, see what's effective and what's not, look at metrics and look at some of the figures that's coming back to be sure that we can see what we can change and what we can modify to ensure that we're getting the expected results. Identify barriers and challenges and obstacles that are in the way. And then that way we can find ways to remove those obstacles and barriers. Expect senior management to support us 100%. As I said, from the top down, you secure that, it sets the tone for the organization. You want to build a safe, inclusive culture, void of insensitivities as well, and create a mentorship and sponsorship or opportunities wherever possible. Our call to action is to say that leadership is a lighthouse, we would say, a beacon it needs to be a beacon to our diversity, inclusion, and belonging strategies. It should be a driver within it, and it should not be something that we tack on at the end. It'd be something that we shift left, which means we start from the beginning, embed leadership strategies throughout, and then bring it all the way up. throughout that pipeline. We want to set clear, measurable diversity objectives that diminishes cultural bias and demands accountability. We have to have a way to make sure that the work is getting done, what's getting done, so that way we know what's effective, what's not effective, and then we also know what is untapped. So then we need to be able to find a way to reach the untapped. Professional development programs, transformations should be done. Employ cultural mind shift paradigm thinking, and that just means that we're changing the mind shift, that you'll be able to think outside the box when you're looking for solutions. And stretch assignments means that you may find ways to ask your manager for additional assignments that you'll be able to incur. And just statistically, we'll go over them briefly. 58.8% by the numbers of US of the population are women. 39% of the population of the entire population is women. Women of color are only 4.7% of the executive and senior level space. The benefits is we're saying that if you provide a way to include the culture, the perspectives that are missing, the gender pay gap provides benefit for everyone, because women would be able to be paid more and paid what they're worth. And then that way you have more income coming in the household anyway, so it helps overall. 40% of HR directors are women. You're not seeing only about 17% as CMOs and 16% as CIOs. So as you see, the disparity and the differences are definitely, there's work to be done. We have some leaky pipelines. And just North America is at 29% of women are in senior management roles, and we have room to improve. And looking at the numbers, I talked about it being bottom heavy. Professional support staff, you're seeing them close to the 50% mark, but then you get all the way to the executive space and you're only at a quarter of that. The highest amount of management roles is in the medical and food industry spaces, but we need to diversify across the board. It doesn't matter what job spectrum you're in across those spheres. We want to make sure that we're integrating within them. And then as you can see, the C-suite, the numbers are getting, as you move from the bottom, they're heavy, and then you go up, they're like 21% in the C-suite. So this is what we're looking for, more of a diversity and inclusive culture where everyone sees someone who looks like them and they feel like they can belong there. So I would say accept the seat at the table. Having more women in decision-making roles has been found to generate stronger market returns and superior profits for companies overall. Female women, what we bring to the table: mixed passion, balance of decisiveness and authority and assertion. We also bring our diverse perspectives. So bringing this to a close, our takeaways: have better line of sight for succession into the management roles, chart clear paths to leadership to disseminate this process across the organization, provide training educations and cultivate those necessary competency skills so that we do see that we can effectively move to senior management, C-suite, and corporate board position. Skills are needed: finance, operations, governance, management, investors, stockholders. We need to find ways to incorporate these skills so that we learn. And you can do that by serving on nonprofit boards. You can also see that some of these skills can be obtained by running your household. So you can learn a little bit about finance. You can learn about operations. You can take some classes on it. So there's ways that we need to get this education so we'll be more effective. Women need to see themselves in the leadership roles in order to visualize that they can actually get there. And it's something that we need to do together. And as organization leaders, an action plan is hiring well is not enough. We need to create a clear map, have shared scorecards, disseminate and reaffirm the plan for depth and breadth of our DEI objectives, including from the left, that's inclusive across the pipeline. Execute this plan, great cohesive, diverse culture, live by our vision, mission, and values. Leaders set the tone for the entire organization for us to follow, and it needs to be bi-directional accountability. So culture conversations, retrospectively, we need to be able to have a conversation. This is a hard topic sometimes for others to talk. We need to start it. We need to be able to talk about it. We need to set clear expectations and provide that feedback so that we'll be able to move this cause forward. And last, I'd say diversification of senior roles will have a positive impact on the organizational culture. And the bottom line is that among cybersecurity professional minorities that do advance the leadership roles, they often do hold higher degrees of academic education than their Caucasian peers who occupy those same position. And employers that value mentorship and training enrichment programs that build strong body of knowledge in cybersecurity and professional development while supporting career advancement is trending with millennials, women, and racial and ethnic groups. So as I say, there's a call to action. We need to do the work because there's more work to be done. And we have to work together and be allies in this cause. And I would say, thank you for giving me the time to speak with you and enjoy the rest of the conference. They have some dynamite content.
Thank you so much, Marche. I wanted to, first of all, you guys have a ton of great information in there. So for anybody that's wondering, we do have some of those slides. I don't know if, is that okay, Marche, for us to share that out with the audience afterwards?
Yes, I believe.
Okay, yeah, we can either share that, or if you have some just specific information you'd like us to, I'd be happy to share that with the audience. And if Elizabeth, if you could help me by pinning myself and all the panelists up next, then we will get started with the panel discussion.
Yep, I'm working on that now.
Thank you. And for anybody that has questions, comments, anything on what Marche was just going over, please, feel free to start dropping that information here in chat or making a note to yourself, because when we break out into the breakout rooms and have the open discussion, I think a lot of that information that Marche just went over is perfect for those breakout rooms to further discuss that.
All right, I apologize. I'm having a little bit of trouble pinning people. Let me just try again. Oh,
it's working now. I see Nicole.
Yeah, Tamika, I need you to turn your video on. I think that's why it's not letting me pin you.
Here we go. I see Jay, Stacy. Hey, there we go, Tamika. All right, we got everybody. All right, so thank you again to all the panelists. We've got some great people tonight. Just to kind of give it again, everybody an overview of who we have here. I'm just going to start with who's on my screen here first, but I've got Nicole Ford, the Vice President and Chief Information Security Officer at Carrier Global, Tamika McKay, Enterprise Infrastructure Services Manager at Broward County Public Schools, and also learned earlier, SIM board member. Jay, and I'm going to hopefully say this correctly, is Switchgable. I hope I said it right.
That's right.
The Chief Information Security Officer at Modernizing Medicine, and Stacy Hipsman, the Vice President of Human Resources at Butterfly Effects. And because we are running a little bit behind time, what I'm going to do here is I was going to have each of the panelists give us a little bit more of an overview of themselves here, but I'm actually going to go just right directly into the questions. So hopefully our panelists don't mind. Just want to kind of keep cognizant of time here. So I'm going to start off with a question for all of our panelists. And again, because we do have the ASL interpreters, just making sure that we're taking turns with speaking. First question is just, what is your opinion on having a more diverse and inclusive leadership team? What does that actually mean to you? Whoever would like to take that first.
I'm happy to start. First of all, I want to acknowledge what Marche said, like everything she said, right? There's a lot of good stuff there. So I want to try to mostly focus on the stuff that she didn't say or that I didn't hear, which is the power of informed decision-making, right? So with greater diversity, we have greater diversity of thought. You have more perspectives that can be brought in, right? Whether those are people who aren't all English speakers, or they're come from different parts of the world, or they're coming from a different sexual orientation, or a different gender, or a different skin, all the different, right? All those things build very different life experiences that when you bring that together, your organization, even a team, we're talking about leadership, I'm thinking even a team benefits from different ideas. Whereas when you surround yourself by people just like you, true in the leadership team as well, you tend to make the same decisions and the same mistakes, right? You're missing out on the richness of additional diverse, feedback and challenging of the status quo.
I'm going to add a little something to that, being that I come from both the public sector, where diversity was mandated at times, versus the private sector, where it's not necessarily mandated. But now that we're in an area of social media, transparency is required. It's even weaponized against various companies, and technology is outpacing social issues. And of course, this remote work has changed the definition of local, community, and relevant labor markets. And that impacts what was diversity and what will become diversity, because it is those differences, and it does add to the fabric of what we're looking at.
Mika, Nicole, did either one of you want to add anything to that? Oh, I think you're on mute, Nicole.
Yeah, thank you. I think it's necessary. I think when people look at a company and they don't see people who look like them and at the senior levels, then they don't come to your company, right? I think that that's going to become a status quo, right? People have options, and especially with COVID has opened up options for people. So I don't have to be in Florida to take a role here in Florida now. So that means because I have more options, I'm going to look for a diverse leadership team to be a part of, because that means that there's an opportunity for me. So that's really, really important. It's really important because that diversity of thought, as everybody has talked about, I think Marche did an amazing job. I don't know that I have anything to add, right? Because she did such an amazing job. But, being the one and only, it's the O&O. That's what I sometimes am called, because, I am, a vice president. It's tough, right? So, it is important that we build inclusive cultures where people feel comfortable to come to work and they can be their best selves when they come. So all of those things, I think, make for greater profits. It makes for creativity and innovation. All of the things that I think make for a great company.
Yeah, I agree. And I was going to add, I think one thing, like you were all saying, is that if people don't see themselves there, they won't apply for those companies. But also is that a lot of times, people don't realize that when you hire new staff, a lot of them make up their minds within their first, 2 weeks to 30 days, whether they're going to actually stay at a company. So even just, knowing that is thinking like, okay, yes, you're able to get somebody in, but are you able to retain them? Like, do you have those people there so that they see kind of what Marche was saying, is those pathways to leadership, to success. And if they don't, they may not stay with your company. I want to, so kind of to tag on to the first question is, when have we truly reached diversity? What does that mean to you to say, okay, we do have a diverse organization, we do have a diverse company? How do we measure that?
Well, what we understand diversity 10 years ago is not the same today, and likely won't be the same years from now. Diversity is learning from our differences to make the whole community better, but it's more than just protected characteristics. To achieve a culture of true diversity and inclusion, You need to address acquired diversity, the appreciation of different cultures from those working even overseas, or men understanding their female colleagues when working in all female teams, those nuances. These kinds of experiences lead to a dynamic work environment, as everyone has said, that's powered by that rich combination of the backgrounds and perspectives, as Marseille and Nicole have said as well.
Did anybody want to add to that as well?
Yeah, I think you have to be intentional about how you measure, right? So I'm part of a global organization. So we look at diversity as, obviously the protected classes, but also diversity of people outside of the United States as well, making sure that we have a broad brush. And I'm really intentional about diversity. I have a 50-50 team. And that was intentional. It was
Awesome.
looking for the talent, no matter where they were, offering, being supportive of if they were in Florida or in Georgia or somewhere else, allowing them to work remote, but making sure that I kind of walk the walk and talk the talk. I mean, being the one and only, I have to set the stage for what diversity looks like, and I have to lean into that. And so it also has motivated my colleagues to do the same thing. They're like, oh, look at Nicole's staff. She's got a diverse staff. Oh, I need to do that too. So then it becomes a competition. And competition is good, right? As long as there's a benefit for everyone. And so that's really led to more diversity on teams. And people have come back and said, oh, look, Nicole, I've done the same thing you've done. And I think it really helps to drive the conversation around diversity, to really think about it holistically, not just from a United States lens, but also a global lens.
And I agree with Nicole, and I do believe you have to set the tone. And I actually have an 80-20 team.
Oh, see, that's awesome.
Yeah, and Nicole, I was going to say, I know one of the very first people you introduced me to is Yabing, which I think I saw that she was on here tonight, but I know that was a discussion that she had in one of our women's councils as well, as how intentional you were. And I think that, when recruiting and retaining a staff, you have to be intentional. I think that's the key word that you used, is because people think that, this diverse talent is just going to show up at their front door, but it's not. You have to actually take some action and be very intentional about where you're finding your talent and how you're finding your people. So I think that's awesome.
Just having a lot of
and actually, go ahead.
And just having a lot of different people in the applicant pool is not diversity.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. And I did actually want to address I had my next question addressed to Nicole here, because it kind of goes into what you were just talking about, is which aspect of implementing like D&I initiatives and being more intentional around the recruitment, what is the most difficult piece of that? Like how can companies that say, I want to be diverse, but it's too difficult, or we don't know how, what is the most difficult piece? And then how can you start overcoming that?
I think it's recruiting. I think you have to set the tone with your recruiting firms. If you use external recruiting firms, having a really good relationship with them and telling them up front, hey, listen, you got to bring me a diverse slate of candidates, right? And here's what that diverse slate should look like. Now, again, of course, dictating that doesn't mean you'll always hire diverse talent, but that's really one of the first steps. And it's also making sure that you have diverse interviewers on the other side too, right? It's not just getting a diverse slate, but I also need diverse people doing the interviews, because they're not going to just look for people that look like them or act like them. They understand. So just having a good group of cross-functional diverse people doing the interviews has been incredibly important. So it's also making sure that you cultivate that pipeline, right? And that people talk about the pipeline, but I think I have seen over the last 6 months, recruiting firms that are really leaning in, bringing good, diverse candidates, and they're out there. People just need to look. And I think that those are some of the things that you have to be really serious about when you go into this and you say, we want to have a diverse firm. One of the things my CEO, he has been amazing. So, he had listening sessions with us to talk about, like, what does it mean to be Black at Carrier? Like, he really wanted to understand that. And that really helps to educate, senior leaders on what it means. So when they're looking for people, they understand some of the challenges we have in the workplace, right? And they're looking beyond just skills and characteristics, but they're also looking, hey, if I want to really bring this person in, I've got to really surround them with a lot of good support and give them a support system so that they can stay in the organization once they're here.
That's a really great point. Very great point. Yeah. And I think with that as well, Nicole, is that you're talking about, you always hear people talk about the hard skills, the soft skills. And a lot of times those soft skills, which I hate that, calling them soft skills, but they're just as important, if not more important than the hard skills. And that, sometimes even in the interview, people are saying, what is your experience with this? And a lot of times the more diverse candidates, they've never been given the opportunity to have that experience. So to me, even in the interview process, that's such a terrible question, is like, what is your experience? It's more about what is your skill set? What is your mindset? And if the person is willing and able to do these things, it's not necessarily just about what their past experience is. And I think for hiring managers, being open to that as well can be super important for finding diverse talent.
I think sometimes you have to give candidates a chance, right? So sometimes our white counterparts, especially white males, they get a chance. They probably fulfill 30% of the responsibilities, right? But they still apply.
Right.
For females and minorities, we just need a chance. We need somebody to open a door. And some things can be taught, right? We have actual classes and support through leadership development courses for people once they arrive at the organization, to really help them through some of those soft skills, but to really see the skill, what they can provide, and that they have the right initiative and to take on the role is important.
Yeah, very good. And actually, I know Elizabeth on here is probably thinking the same thing as me, because I know I'm going to ruin the statistic a little bit, but it's something like, because you're mentioning like 30%, I think it's like 50% of all the job description, a man will look at it and go, yeah, I can do this, whatever, I'll work it out, I'll figure it out on the job. But a woman, almost 90 to 100%, if they don't have almost every single thing on that, job description, they're thinking, oh, I'm not good enough. And so I think that goes for diversity too, because I'm sure that it's even, worse than that when you include diversity in there, where there's a lot of candidates that don't even, consider themselves or go after a job because of it. I wanted to actually address my next question to Tamika. Who do you think should be responsible for championing D&I, initiatives within a company? How can an individual employee contribute to those D&I initiatives? Oh, you're on mute, Tamika.
Thank you. Ideally, everybody should be championing diversity and inclusion. But the reality is not everyone understands or appreciates the value that diversity and inclusion brings to an organization. And truthfully, even if you set aside the social impact, there's the financial incentive as well, as was mentioned earlier. And one example comes to mind. Many of you may remember the ad that H&M made a couple of years back that had a dark colored child in a sweatshirt that said "coolest monkey in the jungle." Well, if you're not dark skinned, that probably meant nothing to you. But people of African descent may look at that, and that triggered, a lot of negative realities. So one could assume that had they had more diversity in the decision-making process, that perhaps someone would have said, there's a certain group of the population that might not appreciate that. So I use that as a good example because they immediately announced that they were hiring a diversity manager after that happened. So it's a great illustration of the power of diversity and inclusion, not just to create a safe place and to make, a successful organization, but just to stay out of the negative news and not lose money. So I would say that it should be everyone, but we should also understand that not everybody can appreciate that. So if you are enlightened enough to understand the value, and there's a lot of research out there. I think Nikki had mentioned some of it in the introduction, that companies who have diverse leadership and diverse teams, it enhances their effectiveness and their end product. So it's not even just you should do it because it's the right thing to do. Hey, if you want to be successful and you want to be competitive, here's part of one of those critical success factors. So I would say if that initiative is not fostered or is not happening in a specific organization, sometimes things have to start from a grassroots, and it starts off with having conversations like we're having today, and maybe volunteering, and maybe starting something socially acceptable. Like, for instance, my son is attending the University of Florida, and please don't be upset with me, but I can't think of the name. It's an Indian holiday, and they wear a lot of colors and they put them on their face. And this was something that we had never heard of, but he had learned about it from a friend, and it was just enriching, and it was just amazing how you can benefit from just starting simple grassroots conversations. So I won't go over my time, but I will say it should be everybody. But if you're in an organization that doesn't automatically have an initiative happening, don't be afraid to start it, even if it starts from just having a conversation with a colleague in a break room, starting a club, and going on from there.
Yes, and I love that point, Tamika, that you made about, because for somebody that is a founder, company owner, and leadership, we're always taught to be diverse and inclusive, be equitable, because we want to be better people. We want to be a better organization. But you know what? Even if you're selfish, you know what? Do it selfishly. It still helps your company. And I think that once whether you decide to do it for good reasons or, I don't want to say bad reasons, because money is not a bad reason, but either way you decide to do it, it's still going to help the organization. It's still going to help the tech talent that's out there. It still helps everybody as a whole. And hopefully through that experience, like you said also, is that the more diverse leaders that we have, the more diverse talent that will be placed in the company overall. So I actually really loved that point. My next question is actually for Stacy. In what ways do you think that current leaders can begin to be more intentional about how they find and attract more diverse talent? Because I know that's, very much within the space that you work.
Absolutely. And I want to give our audience 3 quick takeaways as we begin to think about intention. And Marseille really led the groundwork for this so beautifully. Quotas don't mean inclusion, but I do believe advances in evidence-based artificial intelligence aid in policymaking, and we can take as hiring managers, leaders, educators, this information to have these real quality conversations that we've heard that address quality legislation and employment practices. Secondly, fit is a 3-letter word, as in cultural corporate fit that can result in exclusion, unintended consequences, even algorithmic biases. This digital equity, are we using the right predictors? Remember, science is not objective. Inclusion and belonging are qualitative measures. Just like you've heard, do you belong? Do you feel comfortable? Will you apply? Will you go in that room? Lastly, the highest performing teams, they're more like puzzles, not mirrors. And that's based on the science. You've heard it consistently tonight. And the results illustrating not just increased revenue, by the way, but increased public confidence and trust. Trust is so important nowadays. We're also looking for empathy, empathetic companies, leaders. So who sits at the table? Who's responsible for reviewing the measures, checking the measures, and seeing that the measures are inclusive and ethical? The people impacted need to be at the table. We need to guide C-suite executives. I take it upon myself to guide candidates, to guide potential candidates. And even before you get to hiring and packages, sourcing. I think Nicole kind of alluded to it. Sourcing. I have never had a position anywhere in the world where I cannot find diverse populations of people who I believe have the competencies to do that job. Also, when you're a potential tech leader or your young student visuals, whether it's marketing and media of the organization, whether it's what that young Nicole, young Tamika, young Jay, young Nikki, what did you see? Did you know of this type of career? Did you know of this type of job? And yes, do people emulate others? Also, it certainly starts in the primary schools, and I've gone out there to get whole schools of people. Even years ago, when we went in before technology, fire departments, women never applied to fire; they applied to police. Fires, 24 hours working nonstop, not being with your family, not particularly diverse at one time. Police, women see it. They might have relatives, maybe an uncle, maybe an aunt. So having that early on, same technology. Additionally, building a team who complement each other, not copy those missing talents. You can't stand behind the cultural fit, the company fit, not if you want to excel and beat these benchmarks, either earnings, revenue, or those intangible assets. And yes, people gravitate and stay where they belong.
Very good point. Yeah. And I did want to actually, as you were talking here, Jay dropped something in the chat here that I'm sorry, Jay, but I just have to read it out loud. He wrote, if you don't feel ready to initiate, then go where the conversations are happening, listen and learn. I think that is super important, because going along with what you were saying, Stacy, is that, people are going to go where they feel comfortable. And maybe they're not comfortable leading something because they're not educated enough in that space, but just get involved, just listen, ask people questions. I don't think that anybody that, is within that space, or somebody that is in a diverse group, that if you ask them a question is going to feel offended by it, as long as you're coming across like you really are willing and able and open to learning. So I really loved that comment there. I did, and I'm sorry for my dogs barking in the background, by the way.
Nikki, if I can add to that,
Of course.
when we first started talking about creating a series of events on diversity and inclusion, my first thought was, I'm not an expert in that. I'm an IT manager and I'm a public policy major. I don't know anything about that. And then a mentor of mine, I shared my concerns with her, and she said, you know what? You know more about that than you think you know. You're living it, you're part of it, so you absolutely have something to contribute. And for some reason, after having that conversation, then I had the confidence to say, sure, I'm going to join the conversation, I'm going to join the board, and then I'm going to join some other activities as well. So I want to share that, because you may be feeling the same way that I felt. Like, what do I know about diversity and inclusion? I've never studied it or specialized in it, but we live it, all of us. Even if you're not the minority, you interact. So we all bring something to the table. And there is one thing that I like that Michelle mentioned, that it can't be controlled by just one group of people. It really has to be a universal commitment and a collaborative approach.
Exactly. Very good point. And I think, a lot of times we have that imposter syndrome where we feel, I think that goes, you always hear about women having it, and I know we all do, being a woman, but I feel like everybody has that they feel like, hey, I'm not good enough, or I don't know. And, I think it's just getting involved and realizing, what, I'm better at my skills and my strengths than I think I am, and a lot of times I think that we just have to have somebody that tells us that. So whoever told you that was a very wise person. So I wanted to address my next question to Jay. I know this is something when we were planning this event that you had brought up, which I thought was super important, but we started talking a little bit about acquiring talent, and it's very different acquiring talent from being able to develop and retaining that diverse talent over time. So where do you feel that most companies fall short, and what steps can be taken to improve leadership development when somebody's there at the company?
Thanks. Just first, in 5 seconds, I want to acknowledge what Tamika was saying too. I got the email about being on the panel. I'm like, why would you want a middle-aged white guy on this panel? Seriously? But I'm happy to be here because it's part of the conversation, and that's the point. But to your question, so I think it's not different really than what we do as a company without specific focus on diversity, even in developing talent, focusing on professional development, focusing on identifying high potential employees, giving them the opportunities, the mentorship opportunities, the training, all those things we give them. But so now we look at how do we diversify and how do we grow and expand the diversification pipeline. We have to be deliberate. I think it may have been Nicole that used the word intentional. We have to do something different. It's not going to happen by osmosis, right? We have to think differently about how to create bridges and opportunities to go out and find those employees we have in the organization who are performing highly, who are hungry for that next opportunity, and find out what it is they want to do. I think too often we're waiting for them to step up and wave their arms and make a whole lot of noise, and people don't naturally do that. Some will. People don't naturally do that, and I feel like the answer is to be much more deliberate about finding that population, finding those workers, and seeding them with the tools that they need and establishing those mentorship relations. I think somebody used the word, I think it was Marche that used the term sponsorship. I hadn't used it in that way, but that's a really excellent point too. The people, whatever their background, who are in positions of leadership, to make themselves available as mentors, to create a bond, to create a relationship, is just really powerful. I think that's the untapped potential for professional development, is those those mentorship bonds. So I think I think I covered it, all my dot points. Yeah, I'll stop there.
No, but I think that's a great point too, Jay, is that, the leaders are the ones that have the platform. They're the ones that can bring the people up with them. So yes, I think the word of intentional is probably our word of the evening, but, being intentional and knowing I do have it's finding those people that are making a difference in the company. They have a good work ethic. They're showing up every day. They're making differences, and a lot of these people, may not be initiators, is the word the word that you had used, but are still wanting to get involved in this conversation and grow their careers. So I think that's a really good point. Did any of you want to add to that? I saw you came off of mute, Stacy.
No,
Okay. I was just watching.
I'd like to say one thing. We have been really intentional about leadership development. We've actually created a leadership. It's called the Elevate program. We have one for women, and we just recently created one for Black employees as well, to make sure that we're kind of developing and training them. And when we do our LDR, which is almost like our 9 box, where we're evaluating employees, we actually have one for minorities. And that allows us to really look at minorities, holistically and for leadership positions. So it's been really, really critical for us and very helpful in identifying talent. So we're not we don't have to always go and look like who's ready. We already are building out that pipeline of people that are ready.
That's awesome, Nicole. And I think too, it shows those employees that you are doing that and starting to build a pipeline, because I can't tell you how many times I run into where an employee doesn't even realize that a leader is looking at them and they're already looking for other jobs, thinking like, oh, I've been trying forever, like I'm going to leave, I'm never going to become a manager or director here. But that way too, is that they know that they're worth being worked on, and you guys are looking at them and helping and supporting them. And I think that's really important to building that pipeline as well. That's awesome. So my next question is actually for you as well, Nicole, is knowing that it often takes diversity, inclusivity from a leadership side to cultivate more diverse leaders. How do you start to change the company culture to be more diverse and inclusive? How does that culture change actually start?
So it's having the uncomfortable conversations, right? So starting at the top, like I said, our CEO had listening sessions, and actually he was contacted by our Black board member who said, hey, are you looking at the news? Let's talk about this, right? And that helps, right? Now, a board member calling an executive team and saying, are you looking at the news? How are you going to respond? And it started a series of conversations that have just led to an awakening, right? That awakening is not just happening at Carrier, it's happening all over the United States. And we've got to continue those conversations, right? That's how you keep those conversations going, you engage in an education, and that's how you change the culture, right? It's about one conversation at a time. It's about, one person educating another. And if we're all doing that, then it leads to us really kind of setting the stage for, then let's draw the line in the sand and actually memorialize goals. And those goals are very, very important, because that's really how we start to, judge our progress, right? We start to look at how are we progressing. The other thing that I think has been helpful is we've set up in some of our divisions diversity councils. Right? How do you keep it top of mind? How do you kind of further progress the dialogue? How do you really help and, not just educate our allies, which are white colleagues, about what it means to be Black or Chinese or Hispanic in this environment, but it's on the other side too. And so all of this education, I think, really leads to us, everybody having an awesome understanding of what's the culture like here, and how do we change it? And with everybody operating that way, it really has brought about a series of changes that are really kind of aiding and making a better Carrier. So I would certainly say start the conversations, look for avenues and ways, whether it's through an ERG or other avenues, to start to have the conversation with others. And it's one person at a time. And if in fact you have sponsorship, right, which we do, we've been intentional about sponsorship, go and have those conversations with your executive or whomever you report into. And when you're brave enough to do that, and some people aren't, right? So sometimes there's another way. Those are the things that change the culture. And we want, when you want a culture that is more inclusive, you have to walk the walk and talk the talk. And sometimes it just really takes bold moves and courage.
Yeah, and I wanted to address something both, Nicole, that you and Jay had brought up. This kind of went into my next question for you, Jay, but you both mentioned mentorship and sponsorship. I guess this would be for either one of you or anybody who wants to answer this, but just what is the difference for people that are listening that don't know? What is the difference between mentorship and sponsorship, and maybe what are some of those benefits of either?
I'd love to start. Yeah. Just really briefly, and then others too. So to me, and again, I just admit it, I've heard the term sponsorship introduced, but the way I interpreted that, a mentorship is a bond. It's a trust relationship. A sponsorship is maybe a woke leader who is recognizing the value of sparking that diversification journey, right? And being deliberate, being intentional about finding that talent and kind of creating opportunities and bootstrapping them forward. But there's not necessarily a close relationship there. It's just recognition of the value.
Sponsors. So sponsors are really, really important, right? So they're advocates. So they go to the mat for you. Right. So if there's another role, there's a role that everybody's talking about, and they're putting together a short list of people, your sponsor is saying, Nicole should be on that list. And here's why she should be on the list. They're there to advocate for you. They're there to help you to get your next role. They're there to be your cheerleader, right? They have tough and hard conversations with you, and really kind of help you to figure out your path. Mentorship's a little different, right? Mentors, it's really about that one-on-one bond. It's about kind of helping somebody through their career, helping them. Sometimes it's being a sounding board for them to help them get through a situation that they may not have experienced before. But they're different relationships. There are some components that are the same, but a sponsor really is there to get to know you and the best way and advocate for you throughout the organization.
Yeah, I think that's a really good good description there. And also Stacy dropped something in the chat that I wanted to mention is she said sponsors use their capital. So it sounds like the sponsors are, you know, using their capital, using their platform. Like you used the word advocate. I was thinking that when you said it, so I thought it was perfect. But yeah, sponsor advocates for your journey. That's perfect, Marche.
Sponsor often in some organizations, very high level organizations, when you evaluate them on performance management, the highest level, they're evaluated on their success as well, the sponsor.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
That's a way to the golden thread.
Exactly. Yeah. I think we're going to have a few quotes from tonight's discussion. So I'm going to change the discussion really slightly here, but address the next question to Tamika. What can, on the tech talent side, because we're talking so much about what leadership can do and what they can do to advocate for some of the tech talent, but what can the tech talent do to progress within a company to these leadership roles? What would be one suggestion that somebody looking to get into leadership or make that push towards leadership do?
The first thing I would say is volunteer. I've spent a lot of time volunteering for things that have sometimes stretched me very thin, but each opportunity that I've been given to advance in my personal and my professional life, I can directly correlate it to a volunteer opportunity that I took advantage of. Educating yourselves because of COVID, there's a lot of free resources. So I would say try to broaden your horizon. And lastly, I would say that we should all remember that diversity does not only mean ethnicity or background. I want to give an example of my husband and myself. We both are of African descent. You would look at both of us and think, or would think the same way, but because he was born in an island and grew up in a third world country and was an immigrant, he has a totally different view on how he interprets things than I do. And sometimes they are conflicting views, I might add. But you know, having someone with a different point of view, a different perspective, a different experience helped me see things differently than just being around people that grew up like me and had the same experiences me. So I wanted to mention that earlier. I want to make sure I get out there that diversity does not necessarily mean the way we look, our facial features. It could be, you know, I grew up poor, so we didn't have pets because we could barely feed ourselves. But then I have friends, their pets are part of the family and their pets have their own room. So diversity can mean a lot of things. And I think it's very important that we keep that in mind as we start building stronger alliances.
That's perfect advice. Thank you so much, Tamika. And we've got a couple questions here because I know I'm trying to keep on time as much as possible before we go to the breakout rooms. I did want to ask Stacy here, in what ways can a company measure and evaluate diversity and inclusion within their company? I think the measuring part is the hard part. And I want to see if you've got some advice for any of the company leaders that are listening.
Well, the act of measuring isn't necessarily the hard part. And I actually love this question because the quotas don't automate that inclusion and belonging. And certainly there's a lot of human capital analysis, a lot of data analytics software out there to get that demographics. What it doesn't give you, what you need to be wary of, referral programs as a primary strategy in recruitment, for example. You don't want to perpetuate past patterns or reduce the diversity pool. You certainly want to examine promotion percentages, pay equity. Often pay is seen as a status bar. If people did not start at the same level of pay, there's a continuing bias. The reassignment moves, the percentages, schools, education should not be a club. Those algorithms that reward certain institutions may not touch upon the right areas or decision factors. And I actually love this example because I've just hired 2 people from historically Black colleges. But I want you to understand they're in the algorithms out there, at least in the past they were. They're just being examined now. And certainly if someone buys 2 dresses in a particular area, they picked up it even at a high school level for a scholarship. Well, that might impact creditworthiness. So that might translate to less trust for that employee if the info is misused, or that area doesn't receive as many academic scholarships, so that someone on this panel doesn't go to Yale. Diverse supplier spend. That's something I heard actually indirectly mentioned earlier in Marseille's presentation. Is it in the contracts? That's something we can have impact. I also heard Nicole kind of mention that when she deals with recruiters or outside sources, she's asking for it to, for a diverse pool, but it can be a requirement, an expectation that's there. Certainly philanthropic impact on underserved communities, certainly for those larger entities. Even governments do that, even not-for-profits do that for other organizations. There's a great many more examples, and a selection of measures can involve and should rate study attention validation. So it's not just throwing measures out there. Measures are easy. It's selecting them, who's impacted, as I said earlier. And yes, we should be looking at those other measures that actually harm. And I just think that's so important, because it's not just measuring.
Thank you so much, Stacy. And I did want to mention, because a couple of things that you had said in there actually reminded me, I think I had mentioned this to you before, Jay, of Diane, your head recruiter there at ModMed, that she had told me, she's like, look, I didn't realize, even for myself and my team, how we were measuring our diversity and inclusion when we were looking for, our tech talent, and we were out there sourcing. So she was telling me how she's being much more intentional on her team to open up these roles as early as possible, keeping them open and forcing her team and saying, hey, I need to have this many people, kind of on the docket before I start submitting it to my leadership, because I want to make sure that we've got a diverse candidate pool for them to look at, and not just the first 3 resumes that I get. So I think that was an important piece that you mentioned there also, Stacy, is again, just being intentional.
And I just want one other thing.
Go ahead.
Not just the diverse pool, but prepping them.
Right.
Preparing them. I do that. I can guarantee someone's success if I invest in it.
Very good point. Very good point. And I've got just a couple questions left here. The last 2 questions are going to be for the entire panel, so anybody that would like to answer. I think one thing that, a lot of people attend these diversity and inclusion panels and get a bunch of great information, and there's a bunch of ideas and quotes that come out of it. And, I think a lot of people get motivated, but we don't know what to do with that motivation. Where can we go and find resources? Like, how can we find resources out in the community here in South Florida that will help support this effort? Does anybody have, any advice for anybody that's listening on who they can go to, where those resources can be found, so that they can actually start implementing some of them?
Well, if I could start, I recently was elected to the VMUG Board of Directors. So as an IT community, I know that a lot of the VMUG events that are usually around new features and new technology, we're going to start having more events around diversity, especially within IT. So if I could just put a plug out there, if you are interested, please join VMUG, and you can get involved with some of the events that we're going to be starting to schedule throughout the year.
Perfect. Thank you, Tamika. And I said, if there's a link or some information you want to drop in the chat too for that would be super helpful. Anybody want to add to that? I've got my final question here for you all. So my final question, just to kind of finish this all out here, is for each of you on the panel, what advice would you give to future leaders? Very general, generic question, but what advice would you give to any of our future leaders?
I have one. I think that accountability, taking accountability for what happens. I mean, we all, and this is going to come across differently to different people, whether you find yourself in an underrepresented class or a majority class, but we all have responsibility to take accountability for our own careers. We do that in different ways. But I think specifically about how many times I've had mentees arranged by the company, and we were put together, we had an opportunity, and I've made myself available, and my mentee is not taking accountability for scheduling regular mentorship sessions. Why are we leaving that opportunity on the table? I mean, I want to help, but I see it's just kind of left on the table, and I don't know if it's because they're not sure I'm truly engaged or they're not making it a priority. But it feels to me like they're not making it a priority to take accountability to drive that themselves. So if you're given an opportunity, or you can create an opportunity, find a sponsor, find a mentor. And I see somebody here says, they don't feel comfortable. But particularly, and I don't know how to solve that. That's probably another whole panel discussion about how to address that problem. But I think that it comes back to, if you're talking about the mentorship piece of this equation, it comes back to building that trust. So maybe I haven't done that myself. Maybe that's what happened in my case. But in every case I think take accountability, raise your hand. Somebody said volunteer, right? Do those things to gain experience, to gain visibility, to create face time, and build relationships. And I think that's key.
If I could add to that, again, I really push volunteering. I'm the first one to say I am a double minority in IT. I'm Black and I'm a female. And in a short amount of time, I've already been moved up to a management level and hopefully soon to a director level. But I can say that it wasn't because someone gave me a gift or dropped it in my lap. The first opportunity for me to show my propensity for leadership was a volunteer opportunity. And once people saw, oh, wow, okay, this person is reliable and trustworthy, that opened the door for me to become a leader. So again, I'll mention again, volunteering, it's priceless. And even if you don't get a job out of it, the networking and the connections that you make out of it are only going to enrich your life. So volunteer and network, those are my two pieces of advice.
I'm going to take it a little different. I'm going to speak to those who are about to become leaders, who are leaders listening to us. If you get the opportunity to lead, leaders need to lead. You need a clear and strong point of view. And I think many of us on this panel, our guest speaker, many listening, they're in a position to make a difference in the lives of others. And it's on us.
I think depending on who you are, I think you do need to open up, right? If you are a minority, an aspiring leader, you have to open up. You have to find the ally. It's up to you in most organizations. And you have to invest in yourself. Investment in yourself. I love volunteering because I volunteer a lot. And it was one of the ways that I learned new skills was to volunteer. When they don't pay you and you still do it, that's when you really learn. And it just shows initiative. But also, if you, as a leader, have empathy and always reach down and bring somebody up, it's so important. Give somebody a chance. And I'm also talking about a white leader, right? Give somebody a chance, somebody that's different than you, not just because they have the skill set, right? But because maybe they deserve it. And that's something that I certainly say, look past. Sometimes we look at skills, and if somebody doesn't have exactly what we need, we pass over them. But look for all of the things that aren't on that resume when they're in the interview. And if they look like they take the initiative, give them a chance. And I think if we all have enough empathy, educate ourselves on what it's like to be on the other side, right? So we do a series at Carrier called In My Shoes, which allows each one of us, right? So this is, for all ERGs. So whether you're LGBTQ or a woman or Black or Hispanic or white, right? You get an opportunity to kind of talk about what it means to be in your shoes. And I think that that's so powerful. And it's been so helpful in helping people to understand and to have empathy for one another. And when we do that, I think we can seek to understand and we become better leaders.
I also think for those who are aspiring to be leaders, considering those lateral moves, lateral positions, to see those other perspectives, because that's also the sign of a leader working in budget, working in these other areas, or learning these other skills shows what your capacity could be.
It is true, taking on the hard task. So it's volunteering for something that you don't know or don't understand, right? But that will at some point become a skill that you'll use. You just never know. It's happened to me like several times. I took the hard assignment and it was hard, but the learnings really led me to this path. I mean, cyber wasn't even an opportunity. I had no idea what cyber was. I just didn't. I wasn't exposed to it or anything like that. But because I took the hard assignment, I am now where I am.
And you put yourself in the conversation.
Yes.
Yeah, those are all very good points. And actually, a couple things that you guys had said there, I can't remember who said it, but you guys were talking about mentorship. Is just keep in mind also is that you were talking about, Stacey, about some of those lateral moves to get additional experience and skills. I think that's a huge point. But also when it comes to mentorship, that sponsorship is different, but mentorship, it doesn't necessarily have to be your manager. It doesn't have to be your director. Like you can have somebody that's a mentor that's equal to you, maybe just has different skills or background than you.
And that speaks to capacity as well. When you go outside that narrow lane, as you get higher in an organization, as you become a leader, your role, quite frankly, is not as a technician. So that enhances your ability and your selectability for those roles as well.
Yeah, very good point. Very good. And I did want to just close this out also with a couple of the key words that seems to come out of this conversation, but definitely, I was hearing intentional over and over. I was hearing people talking about passion and volunteering and just getting involved, initiation. Those are a lot of the words that are coming up. So I want to say thank you to all of you for all, your wise thoughts here and your comments, and just also, like Jay, just willingness to even have these difficult conversations, be involved. And we're very happy that you joined us, Jay, that yes, middle-aged white man, yes, we want you on this panel too. So thank you for including yourself this evening. That's actually going to close out our panel discussion portion, but we would love for everybody to stick around and join our open discussions. We're going to have some breakout rooms. If I can ask Elizabeth, there you go. So you're already doing it. Thank you. There we go. So breakout rooms, open discussion. We're going to have 5 different rooms. Elizabeth, if you can go to the next slide here. We're going to have Luca that's going to be shortly putting up on the screen where you actually can just click to decide which room you'd like to go in. It's literally just going to be room number 1, 2, 3, 4, or 5. The different topics in each of the rooms. Room number 1 with Tamika, she's going to be our facilitator in there, is going to be how to intentionally acquire, develop, sponsor, retain a pipeline of diverse talent. Room number 2 will be Tina Honey, how to progress within the company to leadership roles. Room number 3 will be Elizabeth Decker, how to measure and evaluate company diversity. Room number 4 will be Jansen Pennock, how to increase awareness and lead a shift to company culture towards more equitable opportunities. And then last but not least, room number 5 will be with Eileen, what diversity, equity, and inclusion, or DEI, support resources exist for companies. So again, just all you'd have to do is just literally choose which room you'd like to go into, and then the facilitators would help with that conversation. So again, thank you everybody for showing up this evening, and I will join one of the rooms with you guys. So hopefully I'll see you guys soon. Very cool. Cool. I see everybody. We've got everybody back now. So thank you again to everybody that came out. I know it's late, it's dinner time, so we really appreciate it. Just wanted to say thank you again to our keynote, Marche, all of our panelists, Jay, Nicole, Tamika, and Stacey, and of course, thank you to like Elizabeth and Jensen and you know, Eileen, all of our organizations that have come together to put this together. It got some of them here up on the screen. Thank you, Elizabeth. You're good at that. ISACA Venture Cafe, which is again now going to be Air Ventures, Tech Hub, and SIM, of course. So thank you, everybody, for coming out. We will make sure to send a follow-up email. We're going to get some information from our keynote and our panelists, and making sure that you guys have the information that we've discussed tonight. So thank you again, and hopefully we will see you guys again soon.
And thank you to our interpreters. They were wonderful. Thank you.
Yes, thank you.
Yes.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks all.
Thank you. Have a
Bye-bye.
good night.
Thank you.
Everyone.